Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. I'm so incredibly stoked you're here today because, well, we are officially opening the ultimate mystery box. For literal decades, this one barren patch of the Nevada desert has been the absolute epicenter of the world's most enduring conspiracy theory. So today, we're going to use the hard evidence we have to finally separate Cold War facts from extraterrestrial fiction.
Okay, let's dive into this. The big question. Is the United States government actually harboring life from another planet? Or are we just looking at one of the most wildly successful, multi-million-dollar military cover-ups in human history? To really answer that, we've got to start by looking at the absolute peak of modern cultural obsession with this place.
And you probably remember this perfectly. Flashback to June 2019. A 20-year-old student named Maddie Roberts creates this massive joke Facebook event. The title? Storm Area 51. They can't stop all of us. The grand, hilarious plan was for everyone to gather out in the Nevada desert and literally Naruto run past the armed guards into the highly classified base just to finally see the aliens.
But what started as a goofy internet joke absolutely exploded. I mean, 3.5 million people RSVP'd to this thing. 3.5 million! This massive surge was driven, at least in part, by a wildly viral Joe Rogan podcast that featured a guy named Bob Lazar. That one single podcast pulled in an astonishing 650 million views. Suddenly, the entire globe was laser-focused on this one, heavily guarded patch of dirt.
Now, Maddie Roberts, the guy who created the event, he was terrified by the response. He formally canceled it and actually apologized to the authorities. But you know how the internet works, the momentum was already there. Around 6,000 people actually showed up to party near the gates. And while nobody made a real attempt to breach the perimeter, the sheer threat of a mass incursion forced the U.S. military to scramble. They ended up spending an estimated $11 million on emergency security measures.
Section 1. The origins of the mystery. To truly grasp why the military takes all of this so seriously today and why millions of us are still totally obsessed, we have to hit rewind and go back to the summer of 1947. Because the modern UFO craze, it didn't actually start in Nevada. It started in the skies over Washington and on a farm in New Mexico. On June 24, 1947, an aviator named Kenneth Arnold reported seeing 9 highly unusual, shining objects flying at impossible speeds near Mount Rainier. He described them as moving like saucers skipping over water, and bam, that birthed the famous term, flying saucer. Just a few days later, in July, a farmer named William Brazel stumbled across a bizarre field of metallic debris on his property in Roswell. Now, what's really interesting here is the monumental military flip-flop that sparked everything. When the military collected that Roswell debris, they put out an official public statement literally claiming they had recovered a flying disc. Naturally, the public lost their minds. But then, the very next day, officials frantically retracted the statement, saying, oh, actually, it was just a standard weather balloon. That immediate, unbelievable reversal, that planted the seed of a 70-year suspicion that the government was orchestrating a massive, massive cover-up.
Section 2. Cold War cover-ups and spy planes.
This is where the story shifts gears from science fiction into high-stakes historical reality. Let's look at the facts. In 1955, the CIA needed a completely secluded location, totally away from Soviet spies, to test top-secret technology. So they chose the dry Groom Lake bed in Nevada and set up Area 51. And remember that famous Roswell weather balloon? Well, it was actually one of their first major initiatives. It was called Project Mogul, which was a highly classified microphone balloon designed to float at extreme altitudes and literally listen for Soviet nuclear tests. Later on, Area 51 became the birthplace of the Lockheed U-2, the SR-75 Blackbird, which by the way flew at Mach 3, and the advanced aerial surveillance program known as Project Oxcart.
Now, the real reason people thought they were seeing alien spacecraft basically boils down to sheer altitude. Back in the 1950s, your standard civilian aircraft flew at around 20,000 feet. Even the best military planes maxed out at about 40,000. But these new ultra-secret spy planes, coming straight out of Area 51, they were cruising at over 70,000 feet. The average civilian on the ground simply couldn't comprehend that human engineering was capable of flying that high up.
And here is the fascinating visual trick of physics that really fueled the hysteria. Because these U-2 planes were flying way up at 70,000 feet, their silver wings would catch the bright reflection of the setting sun even when it was already dusk and totally dark on the ground below. So, to a civilian looking up into the twilight sky, it looked exactly like a glowing, otherworldly orb zipping silently across the horizon.
So, the crucial point here is what historians like to call the accidental conspiracy. During the Cold War, absolute secrecy was the highest possible priority. When civilians started reporting these glowing orbs as aliens, the CIA was like, great! They deliberately let the rumors circulate. It was the perfect ready-made cover story for their top-secret spy planes. The military even went so far as to delete their own flight logs so that no one could possibly match the timing of UFO sightings to the actual testing schedule of the U-2.
Section 3. The Alien Whistleblowers.
Now, you would think those perfectly logical military explanations would put the rumors to bed, right? Well, the mystery actually deepened when alleged insiders started coming forward. Take Bob Lazar, for example. In 1989, he goes on television and explicitly claims that he was hired by the government to reverse engineer actual extraterrestrial spacecraft. He asserted point-blank that he saw multiple UFOs housed in hangars at the base and that the government was actively trying to figure out how their propulsion systems worked.
And the claims didn't just stop with flying saucers. They extended to biological entities. Let me introduce you to J-Rod. According to some incredibly bizarre independent claims made by microbiologist Dan Burish and engineer Bill Uhouse, J-Rod was an alien captive kept right there at Area 51. Both of these men claimed they worked directly with this being. They even stated that J-Rod communicated with American scientists entirely through telepathy to help them understand these advanced technologies.
And if you thought these stories were just, a product of the 80s and 90s, the trend has actually continued well into the modern era. In 2014, a prominent scientist named Boyd Bushman continued this exact theme. Just before he passed away, he claimed that he had been actively researching anti-gravity propulsion systems at Area 51 directly alongside extraterrestrials. He even produced alleged photographs of aliens to back up his incredible narrative.
Section 4. Pop Culture and Future Warfare.
Let's move forward and see how this builds, because with mounting pressure and just immense public curiosity, the U.S. government couldn't simply ignore the rumors forever. Decades of pressure using the Freedom of Information Act finally broke the dam. In 2013, the CIA declassified documents that officially acknowledged Area 51 for the very first time, noting it strictly as a military test site for the U-2 and Oxcart programs. By 2018, the once invisible base finally showed up on Google Maps. And then in 2021, the government released thousands of pages of previously classified UFO reports.
This modern era of transparency even reached the highest office in the country. Barack Obama became the very first sitting U.S. president to publicly acknowledge the base. He confirmed its existence while playfully bursting the bubble on captive aliens. And the topic has remained highly visible across the entire political spectrum, with subsequent leaders like Donald Trump also actively discussing the possibility of declassifying more UFO records. It's fascinating how this mystery has truly captivated the highest levels of global leadership.
So what does this all mean? If it isn't aliens, what exactly is the base doing right now? Well, today, Area 51 represents the absolute bleeding edge of advanced military power and global competition. The focus isn't extraterrestrial, it's the very real future of human warfare. Military analysts believe that this massive, secure airspace is now being used to develop artificial intelligence applications for combat, next-generation space warfare technologies, advanced autonomous weapons, and aerospace tech that we won't even hear about for decades.
Which brings us to our final thought. Yes, the government has opened up a bit about the past, but the current operations at Area 51, they remain under a total blackout of absolute secrecy. And wherever there's a void of information, human imagination is always going to rush in to fill it. If high-flying U-2 spy planes and nuclear weather balloons could convince the entire world that aliens had crash-landed back in the 1950s, just imagine what incredible next-generation autonomous technology is going to be mistaken for UFOs in the decades to come. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep your eyes on the skies and always keep questioning what you see.